Welcome to Shadow of Truth. Today is Wednesday, February the 10th, 2016, and your hosts are Dave Kranzler and Rory Hall, and we are very happy to have back on the line with us our eyes and ears in Beijing, Mr. Jeff Brown, whose work you can find over at chinarising.puntopress.com. Jeff, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, and this week is Chinese New Year and New Year of the Monkey, and this is the year for intelligent and clever people. So I know you two guys are going to do really well.
I don't know about that.
I don't know about that either.
But don't know about me, but I think you guys will do really well.
I guess in the next half hour we'll find out if that holds true or not.
Talking to someone besides Dave and Rory right now?
Oh, well, guys, let's get started.
They're blaming the current stock market turmoil and global economic turmoil on China, and it's not just China. It's not China. China. It's every major stock market in the world is insanely overvalued, insanely over leveraged. Economic growth is plummeting globally. It's not just China. All China's doing is they're saying, hey, there's a problem, and we're going to be the first ones to try and correct the problem in our system.
Well, the devaluation, it doesn't hurt them. It definitely, as far as, I don't think they're trying to do it on purpose, but at least dramatically. But of course, they actually did devalue at about 3% in the fall. But it obviously helps their exports, and it sure doesn't hurt them. And I think they just want to make sure there's not a run on the renminbi, where it's dramatically devalued, but a little bit of devaluation over here is not going to hurt China just because of the.
Guess what though? It's like the devaluation. I mean, everyone's making a big deal out of the currency reserves leaving the capital leaving the country. Well, what in what form is that capital leaving the country? It's a way for them to sell their treasuries and buy back the yuan, and do it in measured steps. It's basically allowing them to unload their treasuries. Yeah,
which they've got $3.3 trillion.
Well, but only about 1.1 trillion of that is treasuries.
Is treasuries, yeah.
Right. And the most interesting part of that 3.4 or 3.3, whatever it is now, is that doesn't include the value of the gold they hold.
Yeah, that's true.
And that's the most important piece of the equation over in China. Everyone leaves that out of the conversation and they leave it out of the conversation in the Western media because A, they most likely aren't even aware of the amount of gold that's there, or B, they're trying to keep gold out of the conversation.
Well, they're always trying to do that.
Right. Yeah. And so it's like everyone, even Zero Hedge is guilty of it. They sit there and sensationalize the capital flows leaving China. Well, guess what? It's a backdoor way for them to get rid of their treasuries. They don't want them anymore anyway.
Well, and as they do that, they're buying gold with it? I mean, they decided 16 tons in January. So,
well, not to mention
document. We don't know all the gold that's coming in through Beijing and Shanghai.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, they're buying corporations like crazy, or they just did you all hear the announcement that they're going to buy Syngenta, the number 2 company behind Monsanto in the world, for a cool $43 billion. Wow. Which is the largest agricultural chemicals and the second largest seed company in the world. The Chinese are buying that. I mean, they are on an absolute buying spree around the world, buying up corporations all over the place. Well, guys, do y'all want to talk about 2 weeks ago when George Soros came out in the international media and announced that he was going to try to short the Chinese renminbi, or the Chinese yuan? What do y'all think about that? It just seems so. I don't know what to think about it. What do y'all guys think?
Dave, I'm going to let you tackle that one.
Sure. You know, to me, I mean, it wasn't just Soros. You had a bunch of quote unquote well-respected hedge fund quote unquote titans issue statements saying that they were piling in short on the yuan. And to me, it's one of these situations where it's like all of a sudden that side of the ship is becoming awfully crowded, and it seems like such an obvious trade right now because it's, you know, China is clearly on a path to devaluing their yuan, their currency. But I also think you're also getting these bouts where they come in and they buy the currency. And I think that they're not going to. I think here's what I think, Jeff. I think obviously, as mentioned before, I think China is methodically devaluing their yuan. I don't think they care that much about the yuan because they have all that gold behind the scene.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the real currency is over there. And I think what they're doing is they want to systematically and methodically devalue their yuan to let the air out of their bubble. And they want to be the first to let the air out of the bubble because when everyone else runs for the exits, it's going to get awfully crowded and it's going to be ugly.
Yeah.
So they're bracing for the impact of what's inevitable. And I think they're not going to let guys like Soros and some of these other hedge fund DBs make easy money off of what China's obviously trying to get done in a controlled fashion, and to try and avoid absolute stampede out of everything. So
the only way for it to work then is if they're shorting the renminbi. The only way then for it to work is for a precipitous drop. Is that what you're saying? It has to be like something that happens over days and weeks and months instead of months and years.
Well, I think what Soros is trying to do here is he thinks he's going to go in there and bash China and bash their currency the way that he did it with the British pound
in 1992. Yeah,
correct. And you know, there's a big difference between going up against the 1992 British government and going up against the 2016 Chinese government.
Well,
right? I mean, you're talking about tackling, you know, a small puppy versus tackling a rhinoceros, right?
a Tibetan Mastiff.
There you go. Right.
Well, you know, I did some research. They, you know, he did, well, you know, the 1997, you know, Asian meltdown, he was involved in that. He was the one that went in and took down the Thailand bot, which started the big meltdown. And it was Soros that did that. And then he actually tried to do Hong Kong in 1998. And because of China's intervention, they intervened with about 15 billion. This is, you know, that's $1998, but about 15 billion, 20 billion U.S. dollars in the Hong Kong stock market. And actually, so it didn't work. Soros actually, you know, lost money on that deal. And compared to today, you know, the Chinese economy is 10 times bigger than 1998 when he tried to do the Hong Kong dollar, and their foreign exchange reserves are 10 times bigger, and as you pointed out, their gold reserves are probably 100 times bigger. So it just seems crazy that he's going to try to take on, you know, the second largest economy in exchange rate terms, the biggest economy in the world in PPP terms, purchasing power parity terms, and and somehow come out, making money on the deal. The whole thing just seems bizarre.
Two things that I want to ask about. A, how is this even possible? Because China has said you're not allowed to short sell, and I don't know if that is towards their currency along with everything else, but I know that they don't really like people to go to break the laws over there, especially when they're when the government sees them as high crimes, they usually wind up on the short end of the stick, as in the hangman's noose is
Yeah.
soon to follow. And the other thing is that how does this play out in regards to China being added to the SDR basket of currencies? I mean,
Yeah, for
it
the
seems
IMF.
like there'd be some other governments around the world, or some other people, some other important people that may have something to say about that. I mean, so how does that work?
Well, I can answer. Dave can answer the part about the SDR. I'll tell you that right now. In fact, I just wrote an article about it, and it's on my website, about the fact that the Chinese, first off, all the banks over here are people owned. There's no private banks in China. They're all publicly owned by the people, including 4 of the world's 10 largest banks. And they're very, very profitable. And but they are there. I mean, there's just a litany of CEOs and hedge fund managers and financial financial investment house managers who are being brought in for intense grilling. They'll disappear for 2 or 3 days, and for questioning. And the social media over here, is hopping with who's going to be charged with what financial crimes. And you're absolutely right, Rory. In the pantheon of Chinese communism, speculators rank right somewhere a notch below child rapists. I mean, they absolutely have utter disdain and revulsion for speculators like Soros, because they know that one man is making billions and billions of dollars off the misery of millions and millions of people. And so they have absolutely no love for Soros. And when he started coming out 2 weeks ago with this stuff, I mean, the media here went bonkers and just started just laying into him and speculators and etc. So there's going to be some people that are going to go to jail. There's going to be some people, if it's serious enough, who are going to get a PLA bullet in the back of the head. And so that's for sure. That's already happening over here.
Yes.
Both in the state sector, state-owned companies, with CEOs not doing what they're supposed to be doing, and also in the private sector.
Well, I mean, they assassinated that guy that was making dog food that had some kind of lead paint in it or something.
Yeah,
I mean, and they killed him. I mean, so this is a little bit more serious than dog food.
Yeah, exactly. Dave, what do you think? What do you think that the fact that China was brought into the special drawing rights of the IMF? Do you think this is a way for the United States to hurt the value of the Chinese yuan at the IMF? What do you think?
I don't. Again, my view is that ultimately China is going to force a reset of the system, and they'll do that by either in conjunction with the BRICS or with Russia or with whomever, some sort of Asian, Eastern Hemisphere-based consortium. I think they're going to force the resetting of the reserve currency of the world, and I don't know if maybe making sure they got included in the SDR was a step in that direction. Maybe they're like, okay, let's first move the SDR as an intermediary step toward getting the reserve currency status away from the U.S. dollar, right? If they can get into the SDR and say, okay, we endorse using the SDR as the next reserve currency, it moves them in the step of the right direction of seizing control of everything, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, as far as the Eastern Eastern Bloc. It was just announced last. It takes time. They announced this over a year ago when they signed the $700 billion in gas deals. Gas and oil deals between Russia and China, and it takes a while, to get the banks all lined up. But just last week, Russia announced that they would be selling their gas now and oil now to China in RMB, and no longer using the dollar, which is pretty major when you consider the amount of money involved.
Oh, it's huge.
They invaded Iraq and beheaded, Saddam Hussein, because he switched from the U.S. dollar to the euro to sell his oil, and Libya's leader Muammar Gaddafi switched from the dollar to what he was calling the gold dinar, the gold-backed dinar, and the amount of oil and gas that Russia's selling to China compared to what Libya and Iraq were exporting before they were plundered and raped by the West and had both of their leaders murdered. What Russia's selling to China is many times more than that. So you can imagine what the United States is thinking right now. And they can't kill Putin and they can't kill Xi. So I don't know what they're going to do.
Well, and Iran just did the same thing. They're accepting euros. They're not accepting dollars anymore. I mean, that just happened.
They announced that they were going to only take euros. Well, I haven't seen any confirmation that that's actually going to be put in place, but I mean, it sends a message.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, and Iran, that's a substantial economy.
Yeah, 80 million people.
I think one of the things about the Soros situation is that, and it's one thing that would never be discussed in the media, even if the media had thought about it, is you have to consider the possibility that Soros and his consortium of hedge fund cronies who are trying to short the yuan into oblivion, or think they're going to make a lot of money off of it, to some extent they could be representing Western elitist interests. And because when you look at what the United States MO has been, really probably since the 40s or the 50s, a lot of it was based on Milton Friedman's theories about creating chaos. As they go into these countries and they destabilize the country by attacking the currency. And that's part of what's been going on down in South America, and I think it's probably part of what they've tried to do with Russia, and it's not working. And this could well be part, sort of a currency destabilization war by proxy via Soros and some of these hedge funds. I mean, I'm not saying that that's necessarily what it is, but it's always a possibility. But I think
it seems to me like there almost has to be government collusion. I mean, I just feel like, I don't know if y'all have ever read Chalmers Johnson, his Empire trilogy. If you haven't read them, they're really good. He died, I think, in 2013. Chalmers Johnson, Blowback was the first one, and Nemesis was the third one, and I can't think of the second one. But he said that the 1997 Asian tiger meltdown was actually orchestrated by the U.S. government. There was that Taiwan and Malaysia and Indonesia and Thailand were getting too rich and were accumulating too many U.S. dollars and were becoming way too wealthy for the United States to accept that much economic clout outside of the United States. And he explained how the United States used the guys like Soros to go in and precipitate that, because what it caused was a massive repatriation of U.S. dollars from Southern Asia back into the United States. And what was really interesting is that in 1997, Japan actually offered to loan these four countries that were attacked. They actually offered a low interest $100 billion US loan, and the United States said no to that, and of course forced these countries then to go in and to use the IMF and the World Bank. And so according to Chalmers Johnson, that was a U.S. Orchestrated meltdown.
Well, I mean, I'm aware of. I know who Chalmers Johnson is. I know he does very good work. I've never had a chance to read those, but it's on my reading list now. But it certainly, if that's the case, it certainly adds some validity to my theory here that Soros is operating on behalf of the Western elitists.
Yeah, the Western elites, yeah.
Yeah, by proxy. And I mean, I think that's what could be going on here.
Yeah.
Make perfect sense that he would be. I mean, they use anybody and everybody that they can for their dirty deeds. So,
and I read a really good article recently, written. Actually, it's extracts from a speech by, believe it or not, a People's Liberation Army Major General speech, and his claim is that forget the Korean War, forget World War I, forget World War II. The biggest event in the 20th century was when the U.S. decoupled the U.S. dollar from the gold standard in 1971, and he claims that was the most brazen act, and basically it was a call of war by the United States against the rest of the world, to financially plunder the rest of the world, because then they didn't have to, then they could just print money without any accountability, and it was just a really interesting speech. What do you all think about that?
Well, plus it basically created the petrodollar, and it tied.
Yeah, and then he mentioned that. He said that in his speech. He said, what did they replace it with? Well, they forced OPEC to accept the U.S. dollar as the only money that you could use to buy oil, and so he said it was a brilliant strategy by the United States. And he said then they start. He writes about a 10-year. A cycle where the United States will go in and harvest, as you were talking about. They'll go in and they'll harvest an area where the dollar gets too weak for about 10 years, and then it goes through a 6-year strong cycle. I'll send you all the link later. It's a really interesting article, and he's talked about Argentina, in the early 1980s, and how the Malvinas War, with Thatcher and all that, that they use wars like Iraq, and they use wars, like Libya, and other events, as you said, to trigger panic, or to trigger uncertainty, or to trigger a lack of confidence. He pointed out how they did it to the euro, because the euro was getting too strong. We have not only have hot wars, but we have now, financial wars that the United States has used very, very effectively since the end of World War II.
And look at what
look
at what's happened in Venezuela right now. I mean,
exactly.
Right now because
in Venezuela,
they wouldn't play ball with their gold, and guess what just happened? They just got the last scraps of gold back from them because of the situation that the dollar created. Period.
Yeah.
I mean, and those people have been devastated down there.
Yeah. We know some people who. Go ahead, Dave.
There's actually a book that was written by a guy who was part of all of this operation. A guy named John Perkins. He wrote a book called Confessions of an Economic Hitman.
Oh yeah, that's a great book.
Yeah.
That's a must read.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to really understand what's going on and why. And it really kind of tells you just how evil the United States government is.
Yeah, using the IMF and the World Bank to. Well, PLA economic strategist, he said that's what they'll do. They'll go in and they whipsaw a country like Argentina, or they'll plunder a currency like the euro that's getting too rich. They cause a big devaluation, and then the Rockefellers and the big, as you call, the financial elite, the Rothschilds and the mega banks, they come in and they pick up assets in these countries, for 10 cents on the dollar, and it's just a massive flow of wealth from that stressed region, back into the coffers of the West owners,
the parasites.
Yeah, exactly.
I think what we've been kind of talking about here is that what's happening with the devaluation of the Chinese yuan, and with the attack on the yuan by Soros and company, and what China's trying to get done out there, I think that there's probably a lot more going on behind the scenes than is being reported, or even Western media even has the capability of reporting. And I would also suggest that what China's doing is a methodical and systematic deflation of its bubbles as it tries to brace for the impact of an inevitable reset that's coming.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Well, yeah, a world recession.
Right, and you don't want to have that reset happen tomorrow or all at once, because then it's just going to destabilize everything. Of course, I think the danger here is that if we're right about the U.S. trying to destabilize China for the purposes of bringing it to its knees economically, ultimately where I think that could head, and I think there's a lot of ways that we're going to end up in a world war, but that's one of the ways in which this thing could ultimately end up in a world war, because I think China has much greater economic power and political power in the world than the U.S. is willing to accept.
Well, and not only that, but military power, on the high seas, and
correct, that's right,
and the China Sea, and all their new sunburn, missiles, and ICBMs, and it is a substantial nuclear power, and so
either
just
one of you guys see? I mean, would it even make sense at this point for NATO, also known as the United States, to take this world war that's currently happening and escalate it even further? And the reason that I ask is because of what you were just saying, Jeff. I mean, the firepower that Russia possesses, the firepower that China possesses, is far greater, is far superior to what NATO has.
Mm-hmm.
NATO cannot defend against what these countries have. Period. They sure can't defend against what Russia has. What we know that they have. I mean, this energy directed weapon that they have, just that one weapon. There's one weapon that they have that is a total game changer. And the U.S. or NATO has no answer for that weapon that we are aware of. They may have, but they haven't shown it yet. I mean, that weapon will make airplanes fall out of the sky. It will make satellites fly off course or stop working in place. It can take out an entire digital footprint for a specific area, so that nothing digital works within that area. Period. I mean,
they tested that in the Black Sea. The Russians did against the U.S. fleet in the Black Sea, and it freaked the U.S. fleet out so badly that it actually pulled back about 30, 50 kilometers, because they were completely disabled. They had no communication.
They had no guidance as well. You have nowhere. Everything stops, or is scrambled. One of the two. And
then China has these new Sunburn missiles that fly at about 15,000 kilometers an hour, and they fly just about 3 or 4 meters above sea level, just right along the surface. And then when they get to the ship, it shoots up into the sky and goes up several kilometers into the sky, and then comes straight down on top of the ship. And even the Navy, top naval commanders in the United States admit that if there was a real hot war in the Pacific with China, that they would be lucky if their fleet lasted 1 week.
Wow.
See, so I mean, and let's call what's happening right now. Let's call it what it is. We have a world war going on right now.
At least financially, it's just financially for sure.
Well, there's a lot of people dying out there also, in a lot of different locations, and
that's for sure, especially in the Middle East and North Africa and Africa,
the Far East and Eurasia, and I mean, come on, I mean, there are bodies all over the place, and I'm not trying to belittle the situation. I'm just let's look at it and call it what it is. It hasn't gotten to the scale of Normandy, but the fact of the matter is that we have several countries that are engaged in war right now against one another. I mean, look at what is going on in Syria. How many more countries can bomb that one country?
Yeah, now they're talking to the Saudis and the Bahrainis and everybody wanting to go in.
What's left of these people? I mean, my God. I mean, it's a tragedy. Insane. Yeah. It is a tragedy. But didn't mean to get off on that, but it bothers me that we have all of this looting going on one side of the fence, and then we have all this death and destruction going on the other side of the fence, and it just I just want it to all stop, and to be perfectly honest, it doesn't matter at this point how it stops. I mean, it just needs to stop because the looting is too much.
I think Dave's idea of a, I mean, obviously it's all based on the United States being able to print, Super Bowls, full of worthless, U.S. fiat dollars, and it sounds like, short of a hot world war, which would probably mean the end of humanity as we know it, at least in the northern hemisphere. It sounds like the China's and Russia and Iran and these other countries trying to do a financial a currency reset. That might be our only hope. And then we're all sitting there going, well, why doesn't it happen now, and why can't they make it happen now? But let's just hope it happens sooner than later.
We've been
great to talk to you guys. It's always fun. I wish we could do it more often, but I know you all get busy, and I love talking to you guys. And I think we get a pretty good turnout on the show, and I'll promote it on my new website.
Yeah, and we've been speaking with Jeff Brown, and you can find all of Jeff's work. He's got a new website called ChinaRising.puntopress.com. You can find it at ChinaRising.puntopress.com. ChinaRising.puntopress.com. Jeff, certainly appreciate all your time today.
Yeah, I love talking to you guys, and everybody sign up for Dave's email letter. I every time I get one, a couple of times a week, I read Dave's email letter. And I've got the Daily Coin too. I get the Daily Coin emails. So you guys too, everybody out there should be subscribing to the Daily Coin and Investment Research Dynamics, because you guys do great work.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much.
Well, listen, guys, I can't wait to hear the show. Let me know, and I'll promote it like crazy on my website.
That sounds great.
Hey, talk to you guys later.
Awesome,
Happy Chinese
Jeff. Hey,
New
great
Year.
talking to you, man.
Bye-bye.
Speak to you soon.